Welcome to Ask the Hiring Manager. I'm Leslie Hunter, president of Resume Makeover. I've been helping job seekers for nearly a decade to acquire their dream jobs and achieve the income they desire, from entry-level applicants to C-suite executives and everyone in between. From your resume to your cover letter, LinkedIn profile, bio, or website content, I'm here for you. And now I'm going to open the door and interview some of the top hiring managers so that you can have the insight that you need to book the jobs that you want. Welcome to Ask the Hiring Manager. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first official episode of Ask the Hiring Manager. Today, I'm happy to welcome Don Bailey, founder and CEO at 3SP Co., to Ask the Hiring Manager. Don, it's really great to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me, Leslie. It's an honor to be your guinea pig here.
Happy to have you be my guinea pig / first guest. I love it. I love it. So just jumping right in, what type of company is 3SP? What services does 3SP provide?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So 3SP Co. It stands for Second Street Strategic Partners Collaborative. It's a lot of words, so we call it 3SP Co. I grew up on Second Street in South Boston, so that's where the name comes from. So humble roots. And what we do is we focus on growth brands in the hospitality and retail space. And what we've kind of accidentally fallen into is a dual house of both consulting services where we will advise on course of action to scale businesses, but also now recruiting. And what we've really understood our clients to need is a vision for their personnel pipeline to fall in line time-wise and value-wise with their personnel in the field. So it's been really fun. I never thought I'd be a recruiter, but here I am.
Awesome. Very cool. And, a little bit about you too. How long have you worked in the hospitality industry? What type of roles have you had in the sector over time?
Yeah, and May 22nd of 1998, I was hired as a server at the Boston Harbor Hotel. I've grown from a server to owning my own companies, plural, and I've held roles from server, bartender, manager, GM, assistant F&B director, area director, regional director, vice president of operations, CEO, COO, interim CEO,
Oh, wow.
and partner. So I've been very, very, very fortunate. I've had tons of great colleagues and bosses, mentors that have given me opportunity, even when I've failed, which I have plenty. I've been very fortunate to make a living in hospitality over the last 25 years. I'm definitely unconventional, but I wouldn't do it any other way.
Wow. I mean, you've really experienced the gamut, like you said, from server all the way up, COO, CEO. So you really know the ins and outs. So that's super helpful, I'm sure, with what you do now.
Yeah,
And
listen, I just try to apply my practical knowledge and experience the best way I know how, and until my clients and friends tell me I'm doing a bad job or that I don't know what I'm talking about, I've got a nice little racket going on. So I'm very, very lucky that I've got people to call on as clients and friends. So I'm very lucky.
that's great. That's great. And what do you enjoy, since you've obviously had a long career, different roles in the industry? What do you enjoy most about working in hospitality? And then what are the challenges?
Great question. I enjoy most having an excuse to talk to all these super smart people that are successful in a field that I chose to be in, somewhat indirectly years ago, but more definitely directly later on in life. Um, and understanding all the pain points that they deal with on a day-to-day basis, and then you know, getting their trusted and valued feedback on their processes So, here I am. I get to kind of learn for a living from people who are practically applying their own knowledge to their space. And, the fact that I get asked an opinion, which I love to share, obviously, um, is an honor and humbling. And I get the most enjoyment out of seeing those people be successful and hopefully playing a little part in that path and keeping that relationship positive. Challenges, though, that's I'd say the reason why my business started with consulting and expanded to recruiting is people. People remain the number one challenge to any business scaling, particularly hospitality. I believe many people chose to end their hospitality careers once COVID hit. They got a taste of what some free time can bring you from an enjoyment standpoint. And it's been a pleasure to re-engage with talented people and leadership in across the country about how they've found solutions to meet their needs. And sometimes, what we've seen is people pay more money, which is great. They've got more flexible schedules, also great. But they also need results and, holding people accountable for results. So, it's been interesting to see how people have set a benchmark for performance, but also, preach that culture and quality of life are the most important things to their business. But they also need to remember that they've got deliverables. They've got to pay their loans off if they're servicing debt. They've got to continue to grow their business and add locations if they're promising to grow their people from single unit operators to multi-unit operators or investors to give returns. So there's a lot of challenges, but I'd say number one is it's all about the people that are part of your organization.
Yeah, that matters wholly. And speak back to 3SP Co. and like you mentioned, people and organization. What hospitality brands have you worked with while at 3SP Co. If you're open to sharing?
Yeah, I mean, I can share kind of the framework of the brands themselves. Maybe not necessarily their names, but
Sure.
I worked with a regional quick service restaurant based in Boston whose brand was around for 70 plus years.
Wow.
And we had the challenge of opening a new unit in a new town with a expanded business model. And again, the challenges were similar. Not only did we need to build a new restaurant and manage that project with equipment and menus and all the things that are related to a new restaurant opening, but really like foster along the goodwill and the credit the community has given that brand over generations. So it was a really careful thing to expand this business and not really mess with people's belief and love for the brand that existed. Because when you change something that's been around for your entire life, your parents' entire life, and your grandparents' entire life so far, you have a responsibility to the market. You almost don't even own it. The market owns you. And so we worked with them to expand their business model. We added new menu items. We added a bar. We added full service dining. So we actually became like 4 business models in one.
Wow.
And so that opened in early part of this year, and the adding to the leadership of that group allowed for their existing business to become more streamlined, and so they've seen some benefits from not just operational consistency and streamlines, but from a cost of doing business. They've been able to dilute that a little bit between locations while adding to the top line sales. So they're in a really good position to continue to grow. So is it proof of concept? Yes. Are they ready to make the next step into whether it's expanding further in their market or outside of their market or franchising? Question remains to be seen. And that's really what I'm here to do, is help them have some great options to choose from and then help them to see through those options.
That's great. And you kind of answered, my next question or thought with what you were just talking about with working with this brand that's been going strong for over 70 years. But in general, with, your clients that you work with, how do you help them to be able to scale their business?
Yeah, so I think it's about asking the right questions and understanding what it's like to be in their shoes. Uh, they they're really smart people, and to get to have conversations where these really smart people are vulnerable with me and very intimate and open about what their challenges are and honest about their leadership, the personality types and ambitions. So, I think the the way I break it down for them is just listen and really try to immerse myself into what their life cycles like, from like the first day somebody starts working with them to a long-term tenured employee. What are those two people, what does their future look like today, next year, and 5 years from now? And so then we start to build a profile of what the company looks like in 5 years. And if we think that the company profile in 5 years is one thing and the team we have in place right now is completely different, the conversation about how we're adding to the team is dramatically different. If you're just replacing one person with a skill set with another person with the exact same skill set, that doesn't equal growth. So I tell my clients, look, you're entering in a new relationship with somebody new that's got to bring something extra to the table that you don't already have, but it also has to be on the scale of where you're going. So tell me about that profile of person that's going to be most helpful to you now and what you think it's going to look like in a year. Because truthfully, most people, it takes them a year to get comfortable in their role and to be super effective. So we're hiring people with like, you know, let's say 2, 3, 4 weeks of conversations, but we're really hiring them for what they're gonna be a year later. So forecasting, that's really important. And what I think I'm able to do for them, because I've had the experience of hiring these people in these roles over decades and throughout many markets and concept types and volume of sales, they're able to kind of answer their own questions as to what they're looking for. And at that point, if they're engaging me to find people, I know what they're looking for, and I know how to set up that conversation for prospective candidates. Say, this is a company you're gonna want to talk to because it could mean accelerating your goals too. So that's in a nutshell with how I would help a brand scale. But it all starts with people, directly and indirectly.
Yes, 100%. And I like that you mentioned too that when you're obviously helping your clients and these brands, but as you mentioned too, also in a way serving the applicants by making sure it's a great fit for them too, because when it's a great fit for them and for their future goals, they're going to contribute, more proactively and productively to your client too, which is going to help.
Yeah, and one of the services I offer for them too is continued growth. So again, I've got a very unique insight into many different types of businesses. So if we let's just say you've got, let's say you're a CEO and you've got a general manager or a vice president of operations that's been with you for 5, 10 years, and it's clear that they've done as much as they can do, and they're a great person, and that they're holding your company back, right? That's a real conversation for you to need to be able to have and to figure out what the right way to handle this human being in a company that's watching what's going on with that decision. How do we navigate that path with valuable people that have contributed to the organization whose contributions may have kind of tapped out or topped out? So yeah, and on the flip side, those candidates, let's just say like I placed a candidate in a couple, many companies, and I'll reach back out to them 6 months later and say, how's it going? And I'll ask them very similar questions to what I asked in the intake process. And if reality of the situation isn't lining up with what they were promised or what they expected, then I can circle back to the client and say, hey, let's do a 20-minute call about these candidate these now employees of yours. I've got some feedback that's going to be valuable to you. What you do with it's up to you, your company, but I think giving you some unbiased feedback is important, and it's a safe space for the client, it's a safe space for the candidate, so they don't necessarily need to go through conventional HR practices. And HR in a business can be biased. They're there to protect the company. They're not always there to protect the employee. So I'm there to protect everybody's interests.
That's great and very holistic, I guess you could say. Was seeing
Well,
both sides.
I'm in the relationship business too, right? Like that's my phone rings if people want to call me. That's it. I'm not marketed. I'm not somebody that is trying to sell anybody anything.
Sure.
I've been, again, so fortunate to work with such smart people in brands that I love. I'm just a fan of. I'm a fan of all the Boston sports teams. I'm fans of these hospitality brands that I work with. Otherwise, I don't think I could do it. So when my phone rings and it's somebody that's really smart on the other line, and they have a complex problem that maybe I can help with, like that's what gets my juices flowing. And I think on the flip side, they give me more feedback and insight as to what they're all about and why. Again, it fuels my resources for helping other clients.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like something that you really enjoy and that's super helpful on both sides. So that's great.
I hope so. It's keeping the lights on. So
Exactly. Exactly. That's a plus. And I looked up some stats on your industry, and I think it was on workforce.com that the hospitality market grew from roughly 4.39 billion last year to, I think, 4.69 billion in 2023. So obviously, based on these stats, it shows that the industry is experiencing a slow and steady recovery from the COVID pandemic. I'm just curious if you personally noticed more demand overall and more applicants applying for hospitality jobs this year in 2023.
Yeah, so thank you for a really intelligent question, because I think when you look at the numbers like that, it tells a story on the top line. But uh, my own experience with this in multiple markets since COVID hit and has rebounded has been incredibly fast recovery for operators that never gave up. There's been a kind of a come together moment where people realize what was important to grow their brands and they've committed to it. So it's no coincidence that companies that focus on culture have had the greatest successes in and coming back and then adding new units to their organization. But I also think companies that embrace technology have been very, very successful, because the consumer learned to use technology better than ever during COVID. So no matter what your age group was, no matter where you came from, you had to get good at technology during COVID. There was no other way to do it. So restaurants that adapted their operations and their whether it's their prepping or ordering or labor management or sales forecasting or actual like tableside ordering, Bartaco, it's been very interesting to see the success of those who really leaned into technology and culture. So those are the 2 points. There are fewer people joining the workforce, though. So we've seen incredible growth sales-wise for these companies, but more people are either leaving hospitality or hesitant to enter back into it. So what I'm seeing is more of an open mind for people to be hired based upon a little less of their skill and a little bit more of their values and their type of person they are and what they have for potential versus what they've already achieved.
Hmm. Very cool. Okay. Yeah, it's crazy. That's obviously how the pandemic has affected many industries, but hospitality, I know entertainment with people I know being in LA when I used to live there, killed the production and film industry. But there is, like you mentioned, even within the hospitality industry and same with some production and entertainment as well, it's starting to come back. So
Yeah, well, I think currently the writers are on strike, so that's held up
oh, that's
again.
right. Now we've got
Yeah,
that. I know.
yeah. Where I am in Charleston, South Carolina, they're filming The Outer Banks season 4, I believe, and that production is held up because of that. So usually there's sightings of the cast and crew all throughout the area, but it's been widely spread that they're on hold. They're just hanging out until there's a deal done.
Yeah, that's a good point. I did hear from a friend of mine.
So it all came back. It's all good. And leaning back towards technology, related to writers in Hollywood, I think that AI is a very, very powerful tool that if you're not using, you're going to. And
Yeah,
if you aren't using it already, you're already behind. It's something I absolutely use in my practice, and it's been incredibly beneficial, especially when it comes to producing massive copy at scale for multitudes of brands that need it yesterday. So, it's great. It's a great tool. It's a great resource. I wouldn't fully rely on it,
right.
but if you're somebody who does a lot of writing and you're not using AI, or if you're somebody that communicates in the written form in any way to any group of people, if you're not using AI, you're kind of behind the 8 ball.
Absolutely. Like you mentioned, it is becoming a tool that is super helpful. Also, as you mentioned, of course, we don't need to rely on it 100%, but it is something that's helpful. Absolutely. Absolutely. Great. And then on the topic of hiring, hired for over the course of your career, and if you want to expound on any ways in which you assist your clients in the area of hiring, feel free.
Sure. So I've hired from, obviously at this point in my career, I think I've hired over 10,000 people.
Wow.
I did a little homework before this, and I think I'm around 10,000 people. So probably interviewed 20,000 plus.
Wow,
Um,
that's amazing.
yeah, it's when you think about it, that's a lot of time and energy. So, thinking about how to streamline that now in my practice is especially important. But I've hired from server, bartender, GM, director of operations, VP, COO, vice president of people and culture,
Wow.
culinary directors. So I've been very fortunate to be either directly involved or tangent to it. We had to hire one of my experiences was to put together a team in Boston for Patina Restaurant Group, and directly or indirectly, I needed to hire people in sales, part of a sales team, a marketing team, an HR team, not to mention culinary and operations. In IT, we literally had to build a market from nothing. I was employee one, and what I've learned is that you want to be surrounded by people that will do their very best and be great communicators and not get overwhelmed, even if I get overwhelmed, which I definitely did. So I've been able to do that for my own self, but also with my clients now. And what I today I got off the phone with the CEO of a very big company. They have 40 plus restaurants, and I had been speaking earlier to a founder of another company that's ready to exit their company. And I said, who you should talk to is this person. And so, here I get to kind of create an opportunity for a company and a client that wasn't there already. And it may not work out, but it may work out. And to get to play a part in the company's growth because I was able to make an introduction is just like, I just look at it as I'm in the right place at the right time, and I'm here to serve both those parties. And if it's good for them, then it's good for me.
Exactly. You're a connector, right.
Yeah. And I think going a step further, some of the clients I work with don't always know how to handle the process of hiring the right person. So they can tell you exactly the type of person they want to hire, but they don't know how to attract them and then to put them through a process that sets that person up for success at the offer stage and then the training stage and then finally live. So some of my work includes advising these clients on managing their expectations
Yes.
because they think if they're going to pay $100,000 to a GM, that this GM should know everything and be able to do everything on their own. But the truth of the matter is, every organization is completely different, and it starts with that first conversation and setting expectations as to, okay, after this conversation, this is what happens next. Once we go through these things, we're either going to continue to move forward or we're going to say, thank you very much. We've decided to go another direction. And when there's a gap in that process, and then you hire somebody and the expectation is this person gets thrown the keys at them with all the problems that go along with the existing business with no training, it can create a failure before it even gets started. So my role is to really make sure that everybody's going into it with their eyes wide open and very reasonable expectations. It's always great when people exceed them, but it's really unfair to the company and to any prospective people joining the company if reasonable expectations aren't overly communicated and then touched back on during the process.
Nice, nice. And what are some qualities? I know that you mentioned your clients looking for certain things and you with your experience helping them hire and kind of managing their expectations, but what do you specifically look for? And I'll say, for example, I think it's cool, the idea of chefs.
Sorry, you chopped up for a second there.
Sure. What are some qualities or experience that you look for in an executive chef, for example?
It's a great question. Before COVID happened, I would say tenure is really important because at that leadership level, the team you join needs to know that you're committed to the cause, because when there's a gap in leadership or ever-changing leadership, organizations have a really difficult time really being able to nurture that next level team member. So tenure really did matter prior to 2020. So I think when you look at people's resumes, if they have some tenure, like 3 to 5 years anywhere, it's a plus. After 2020, I almost totally discount it because people tried different things and people's business models changed, and the executive chef job before COVID was different than after COVID, and the workforce has changed. So, not only is a pay scale higher for managers, but for the hourly employees, it's entirely different. So, people are expected to do more with more. So what I look for is somebody who can have a very even keel conversation that cites details about what they've done during their career without taking too much credit. And if any credit's being given, it's to their team and it's to the people that made them successful. I do like to hear a little bit about some individual responsibility taken, whether it's something that they failed at or something that they succeeded at, and what the specifics were behind it. I think it's when there's less detail in somebody's resume at a particular point in time, it's probably because they don't want to talk about something that might have been overly challenging that they're not proud of now.
Sure.
So I look for those gaps and I want to talk to people about what they're least proud of, because I think if people are gonna be great leaders, they really need to be able to be humble and be able to talk about their failures and own it and know that it's just done. There's nothing they can do about it. It's just part of their path. And so that's what I look for. And I also try to, depending on the clients, emulate what their values are and understand if I'm personally going to hire this person, I'm going to put my money into their pocket. I need to make sure that I'm 100% bought in, and that the process leads me to a clear decision. So that said, I'm looking for the candidate to give me a definitive, I want to work with this person, or I definitely don't want to work with this person. Nowhere in between am I interested in. So that does come a little bit into play when I'm scanning resumes, because it's very tempting to look at a resume and disqualify people. However, what I look for is those resumes that look a little like they don't make sense. That's when I get people on the phone and make me talk them through it and help me understand them better. And quite honestly, they could be people that need your services to just present themselves better, because they're actually really great people and really great candidates that have a terrible
Right.
written resume.
Right. And kudos to you too for, as you mentioned, giving sometimes a chance to someone that doesn't have the greatest resume ever if you see something that you want to discover more, because I'm sure there are many hiring managers out there, and of course it depends on the size of the company and all of this and the industry too, that will, I know from just my background too, and well, they'll just say nope, not looking. So I mean, kudos to you, because maybe there's something that, like you mentioned, someone just needs someone like my business or a professional resume writer, but you see something, you just don't want to disqualify them and you want to discover more.
Right. So when it happened very recently, where an individual came to me, had a very unique background, completely non-traditional, completely had created their own career, more or less. They were the type of person that no matter where they've been or no matter what they've done, they've forged a path of success. They worked tons of different types of projects in tons of different environments with tons of different people. And once we talked through that, I realized how special this person's talent really was. And because I've had the experience of running businesses like my clients, I was able to convince them to talk to this person when normally they would look at this resume and not engage at all. Super proud to say, not only did they engage, but they offered the position and they accepted. So wow. It went from this match that I knew needed to happen once I spoke to both sides, and them being resistant towards engaging, to we found a unicorn. And quite honestly, it was very going back to what I enjoy most. Here's a moment where I was so happy for the client, so happy for the candidate, and really proud that I was able to push back on the client a little bit and say, I understand that this isn't somebody you would normally take a look at, but tell me that after you talk to them. Just give them a shot. If you wasted an hour, I will pull back my billing an hour for you. But I guarantee you won't find it a waste of time to talk to this person. And so, I think it's been really powerful in understanding that people's skill sets are more valuable than they've ever been. And even though it might not show up on their resume, I think there's a way to take people's skills and experiences and showcase them in a way that's more powerful for employers than ever before. And again, a great use of your skills, because you have that in your toolbox to help people like this person take that experience that they had and make it make sense for a client.
Exactly. And clearly communicate and targets, what the client is looking for, communicate in a way that resonates. But kudos to you, because, right. Kudos to you on.
It was a real high to get that phone call that the offer was being made and it was being accepted. So yeah, I'm excited to see what this person has to offer the company. Now I get to see that in progress. And same company I placed a couple different people with months ago, and they're thriving. So I feel really involved in that process, even though I'm not a direct employee. So it's rewarding, not just financially, but it's rewarding emotionally to see friends of mine grow their companies and listen to a little bit of what I have to say and hopefully ignore the parts that don't make sense.
Totally. And so going back a little bit, but when I was mentioning asking some of the things you were looking for, and the sum up for not just executive chef, it just seemed like in general some things that you mentioned that you were looking for were humility, which even before you said someone who's humble, when you were saying something along the lines of someone who can talk about what they've done, but also give kudos essentially to the team. I said, okay, looking for someone humble, not just trying to, as you mentioned, take all the credit, but who's able to also articulate their individual contributions as well. And also, I think you mentioned essentially some longevity pre-pandemic. If they've been in a role for, let's say, 3 to 5 years, that's attractive.
That's absolutely correct. And to go a step further on executive chefs too, they're craftsmen. They take a product from its raw state and make it into this product that people are willing to pay a premium for. So there's some artistry to it. There's a little bit of math to it, and then strong communication skills. So being able to talk about that in a way where people that work for them are going to want to grow into that type of person is really important. And I remember as a server way back when, looking up and saying, I want to be like this person. It was very tactile. And I've been members of companies where I looked up and I didn't see anybody that I wanted to emulate, and for me, that was the ceiling. And I just think that when, an executive chef particularly, has the same sort of care, passion, and craftsmanship state of mind that a line cook would have, they'll be able to talk to the servers, they'll be able to talk to the line cooks, they'll just treat everybody with this respect that goes along with craftsmanship. And I think that's what I love most about hospitality is, you could be good at talking, you could be good at math and technology, but then there's this like special craft where like you make things taste good.
Yeah.
And that's just something that I don't know. I just think we can all enjoy that.
100%. And when you were talking about, kind of the craft around being an executive chef, for example, but also being a good team player, made me think of, I'm by no means a chef, but I do enjoy cooking a lot. And there was this cooking show called Chow House where this team was based in Italy, and they had people from all over. And it's really interesting the challenges they had, because you can have someone who's a fantastic chef, great at what they do, but maybe they're not the best team player, not the best communicator. Or you can have a chef that's maybe a private chef, so they're used to not dealing in a team setting and executing orders and talking respectfully and clearly to others, where you can have someone who is worked with, it doesn't have to be a Michelin star restaurant, but who's worked with a very successful restaurant, who has to delegate orders and be respectful while also being, super craftful and kind of the creative star. So it just made me think about that, because being a talented chef, when you're working at a restaurant, it's not just about the craft. It's about, as you mentioned, communication, being a good team player. You can't be the diva.
No,
per se.
It's funny. I've gravitated in my life towards professional sports, and I think anybody who's super competitive and been part of a team can do really well in hospitality, food and beverage, because it really requires you to stay in your position and to execute and be surrounded by people who need to do the same thing, all the while communicating across different channels to make it successful for the ultimate goal. And what I've always said is, I'd almost rather be in professional sports, not just because of the money, but every season ends, right?
Yeah.
In hospitality, we don't have a beginning and ending of the season. There are seasonal restaurants, don't get me wrong, but business cycle is never ending. So you don't get to celebrate a championship in the restaurant business. there are certainly accolades for the industry, but by no means do you like hold up the trophy and walk away and be remembered forever. I think in this industry, it's all about what you're doing tomorrow, not what you did yesterday, and that's what people are going to remember.
Absolutely. That's so true. I think on that show I watched, one of the judges had said that you're only as good as your last dish. Like, no pressure or anything.
Yeah. And I'd say you're only as good as your next dish.
That's true.
Because I can't eat the one you made yesterday. I can only
Very
eat the one
true.
that I'm about to eat. So
Very true. Very true. Huh. And what is an example? I know you mentioned some of the things you're looking for in a qualified candidate, and that will hopefully transfer to the resume, of course. What's an example of a question or two that you may ask to job applicants while in the interview?
yeah, so I love asking, and it can be even for culinary people. You say, tell me an unreasonable guest request that you handle. It's a little bit of a setup question because it definitely connotates that it's okay to say no to guests. And there are some times where in your career, you're going to get asked something that's completely unreasonable. It's going to happen. So, when you say the word unreasonable, that means something to me. It may mean something completely different to you, and it probably means something completely different to the client. So I'm trying to get a sense of what that means to you. And if that means to you something that to me is no big deal, we've got a disconnect, right? And then I'll ask, what have you done specifically that has an impact on your business, or what are you most proud of? And again, I'm looking for somebody to take the opportunity to give credit to their team, credit to somebody that's part of their team, instead of just saying, well, I did this. Saying I too much in an interview is a little bit of a turnoff. However, depending on the environment that the client might be looking for, they may need a very ego-driven leader. Sometimes, if that's missing from an organization, that single-minded approach to success is I think really important. But that single-mindedness needs to be all in the name of everybody, not in the name of the person sharing the message. So it's tricky. But those are a couple questions that I asked that are standard. And then if I did a background check on you, is there anything we need to be concerned about? Because I will find out. So that one's always a fun one. And you get people to open up about things. Again, in that question, it'll be like, oh no, I'm fine, or no, but I would like to tell you this. And again, it gives me a little bit of a greater sense of who they are as people, and maybe where they've come from and the mistakes they've learned from. That's certainly something I respect. Doesn't always happen, but it's something I do enjoy.
Very cool. And so, yeah, it sounds like from what you were saying, especially with the question on, what has the applicant done that specifically has had an impact, it sounds like, and I'm kind of reminding viewers too, be a team player. And this could also expand to different industries. I know it, of course, depends on the role. Like you said, if the company is looking for someone that is more egocentric, but essentially, I think it is a good thing to communicate the things that you've done individually, but also give credit to a team. So not too many eyes, right? I agree with you.
Exactly. Say I less. And I am certainly guilty of that sometimes. So
we all can be, but humility, I think, never hurts, It depends on who you ask, but I think it's always good. And also any faux pas or things that, even if it's at a first glance, when you're looking at a resume for hospitality applicants, that even if you give them a chance, that you kind of see as, ooh, that may not look good?
I sometimes overstating or presuming to know that you can help the organization you're trying to join without having a discussion first. So, things that can be a real turnoff is I can impact anybody positively. It's like, well, that's not true. Like it's just a fact. Like
Right.
there's no panacea. There's nobody that can be a solution for everybody. So I would say a faux pas would be saying that I know I can be successful in that organization, and at the same time that individual may not have spent more than an hour in the unit or in the organization or working at all of them or talking to anybody that worked there. So I'd say making presumptions is something that it's a real red flag for me
Okay.
because while I think it makes sense to extrapolate from experience and conversations with the people that are directly involved, I think making assumptions does exactly what assumption the word assume does, right? So um, that's a real turnoff. I think people who then when they don't ask questions, that's a real red flag too.
Sure.
Um,
Right.
I think if they're not asking questions, they're not really interested or they're not really motivated.
Right. And
I'm
that would
looking
be
for
more in the
people.
interview, of course, not so much the resume.
Yeah. I mean, so, but if they're in the resume that's itself, if they're not answering the question why I'm looking,
I see.
so if they're applying for a role and it doesn't fall into the trajectory or the geography that they're currently in, that's a huge red flag. And so I'm looking for a cover letter or some sort of explanation, getting ahead of the obvious questions or resumes begging to be asked so that I don't then need to make a judgment call during that conversation. So, not of course I'll still ask about it, but I think forcing the person to kind of commit to a position is important. And if something doesn't make sense with somebody's pursuing a new position, a new company that doesn't line up with where they've come from, yeah, it's a little bit of a understanding. And then
Sure.
also like and if I Google somebody and they don't show up anywhere, that's also like a major red flag.
Yeah. Yep. And so that kind of goes to when you say anywhere, that could mean whether it's Facebook, whether it's LinkedIn, just any
Just
presence.
any visibility anywhere on the internet. There it fair or not for me to decide, but the perception of a lack of online presence makes it seem to some people that there's something to hide.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I don't think that's a tenable thing for a leader to be projecting when they're trying to grow their career. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that, and even what I mentioned to clients that probably have some sort of online presence, but it reminded me when you mentioned that, I mentioned the clients like LinkedIn as well. I mean, if nothing else, have a LinkedIn. I mean, when you're
yeah,
applying for a job, and you can tell me from your experience, but I know a lot of hiring managers, they'll get a resume, but a lot of times, like you mentioned, they'll go immediately either Google and especially look on LinkedIn and see if there's a presence that way at minimum on LinkedIn.
yeah. I mean, I wouldn't go as far to say now for me, not being on LinkedIn is a disqualifier.
Sure.
But it's certainly not giving you the best chance of success if you're not digitally representing yourself.
Right. 100%. And in the right way, especially, and this is maybe more for younger people, although it could apply to any age demographic, and which I've mentioned to some of my younger clients graduating from college, et cetera, to be very mindful of what you put on the internet. It's always important
Forever.
for any age group. Maybe it's more, you would hope it's more common sense the older you're alive, but this can apply to any age demographic. But especially I tell my younger applicants, be mindful that hiring managers, they may be going on and scoping out your Facebook. So try to limit the party, the party photos or things that don't look super professional, or at least decent.
Understood.
Yes, 100%. So you mentioned, you work with companies in Boston and you're based in South Carolina, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm based in Charleston, South Carolina, and yeah, I'm from Boston originally. Many of my clients have either a footprint or headquartered in Boston. Um, but I'm seeing more Florida, DC, Colorado, Texas, Chicago area. I mean, the Southeast is a hot market where I'm at. So, yeah, I mean, it's just fun. I like to get calls from all over the country and see where it takes me and try to avoid conflicts too. You know, if I have two clients that have similar concept types and similar markets, it's probably not good for me to be working with them at the same time. So sometimes
Absolutely.
it does happen.
Absolutely. Is there a way for, I know you work with your clients and you work with, I'm sure a decent kind of group of clients, but if a job seeker's listening currently and is in the hospitality industry and wants to apply or is curious about the companies that you work with or if there are any roles available, do you have any input there? I know you don't work with just one client.
Yeah, so I mean, the best thing that people can do is contact me directly, Don at 3sp.co, not .com. My website is 3sp.co, not .com. Or text or call me. Use LinkedIn. I'm everywhere you'd want to find me. My cell phone is available everywhere. So you can overlay that on this if you want.
Yes.
But texting, emailing, messaging, any way on LinkedIn is probably the best way to find me. And if nothing else, worth a conversation. That's kind of how things happen. Is in our day and age of everything being so digital and people like defaulting to text, I've truly enjoyed and found that picking up the phone and talking to people gives birth to so many better ideas than you could have in a one-to-one conversation. So a text is this monologue that goes one way and back another way. A conversation is a dialogue where we read body language, we hear tone of voice, we light bulbs go off when we talk to people, we have ideas, right? And so the best thing people can do is just reach out to me and let's get on the phone and let's figure out where to take your career and where to take your company and how we can grow together.
That's great. So you heard it, folks. Any hospitality people, director of operations, culinary director, executive chef, anyone who has interest with getting in touch with Don or seeing if his companies are hiring for a position you're interested in, contact him at Don, D-O-N, at 3sp.co. And thank you so much, Don. It was a pleasure to have you with me and on the show. And you've been awesome. Thank you also, viewers and listeners, to tuning into the first episode. And please stay tuned for the next episode of Ask the Hiring Manager.
Thank you, Leslie. My pleasure.
Thanks. Bye, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Hiring Manager,